During this session, we will create the remaining two teeth on the cutter. The second tooth on the cutter will be sketched on a new datum plane that is tangent to the curved surface of the circular disc and perpendicular to the DTM1 datum plane. We'll start the process of creating this new datum plane by first clicking on the Datum Plane Tool icon. And then we'll select the curved surface of the cutter shown here. Next, we'll hold down the Control key and click on the DTM1 datum plane. We now must change the constraints listed in the datum plane window so that our new datum plane is tangent to the surface of the cutter and normal to DTM1. As we can see, the new datum plane is now positioned correctly, so we'll click on the OK button. This new DTM3 datum plane will be used as our sketching plane for the second tooth, so we'll click on the Extrude Tool icon, followed by clicking on the Sketcher icon that is located in the dashboard area. Now we'll select both the sketching plane and make sure that DTM1 is our reference plane, with the orientation set to top before clicking on the Sketch button. As before, we'll change the display type to Hidden Line when we are in Sketcher and then zoom in on the sketch. We'll now click on both sides of the cutter's base feature and then the DTM1 datum plane and finally both sides of the first tooth in order to define them as references. Now we'll sketch the profile of the tooth by first clicking on the Create Line icon and then sketching 4 lines. Next, we'll dimension the distance between the horizontal lines of the sketch, and then modify the value of the dimension to 3.5 units. We'll now select the Continue icon and then make sure that the extrusion will occur a specified depth from the sketch plane, and then set this depth to 2 units. We'll now preview and then accept our new feature. We'll now create a hole on the outer planar surface of the tooth. We'll start by selecting the Hole Tool icon. In order to define the placement plane, we'll click on the outer surface of the tooth. We'll now use the drag handles to dimension the hole to the DTM1 and front datum planes. And then click on the Placement tab in the dashboard and set both of these dimensions to 0. Then we'll change the diameter of the hole to 1 unit and set the depth of the hole to be 8 units from the placement plane. To finish, we'll now click on the Verify and Accept buttons. Before we create the third tooth, we'll clean up the display a little by hiding the 3 datum planes that we have created. We'll do this by first selecting them and then clicking the right mouse button and selecting the Hide option. For the third tooth and hole combination, we'll start with the hole by first selecting the Hole Tool icon. Since we do not currently have a properly oriented planar surface, we'll now select the Datum Plane Tool icon. Next, we'll click on the A1 axis to add it as a constraint. We'll now hold down the Control key and select the top datum plane. In order to properly orient the new datum plane, we'll change the rotation angle so that the new plane is 30 degrees below the top datum plane, and then click on the OK button. We'll now return to the process of defining the hole by first clicking on the Resume button in the dashboard area. The drag handles are used to dimension the hole to the front datum plane and the A1 axis. In the dashboard area, we'll now check that the dimensions are both set to 0 and then set the depth of the hole to intersect all surfaces. And then we'll verify and accept the hole. We are now ready to define the last tooth. We'll start this process by selecting the Extrude tool icon. Again, we need to construct a datum plane on which to sketch, so we'll click on the Datum Plane tool icon now. We want the datum plane to be normal to the axis of the hole that was just created, so we will select that axis now. We also want the new datum plane to be tangent to the curved surface of the cutter, so we'll spin the display and then select this surface while holding down the Control key. Now we'll change the constraints in the datum plane window and then select OK. We can now select the Resume button in the dashboard, followed by clicking on the Sketcher icon. Our new datum plane is now selected as the sketching plane, while the front datum plane is used for the reference plane. The sketch of the tooth profile is similar to the first two teeth, except that we must draw an arc around the existing hole that was just created. In order to facilitate this process, we'll include the existing hole as a sketcher reference and then sketch an arc that lies on our circular reference. After completing the sketch, the profile is extruded 2 units.